Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Today I wanted to, let's start out first with why things are the way they are in the organization. Right now, the plan for world peace has been opened up for debate, and people all over the world are aware of the plan. We have members in 87 countries, and that allowed the plan to be leveraged up to the ambassadors, and then that allowed it to be leveraged up to the world leaders. So we kind of did an end run around it. By having the voice of the people on our BRACS page, our affiliate membership page, that allowed us to get it to the world leaders, not into the U.S. government though. And today, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about here, is what happened as it was going around and doing this end run. Instead of just sending it to our congressmen and they have their own agenda and they're not listening. But what would happen is if we did an end run, it would go around and it would be with the world leaders that they're all talking about it. All the ambassadors were talking about it, and they're going, this sounds like a really good idea. When you take the existing structure and compare it to what can happen if all the countries are considered equal, that's a pretty positive thing to debate, especially at parties when you have let's say all of African countries or South American countries, and they're talking and they're thinking about what they can do, and then what they can do on an individual basis to actually solve this problem that they have. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. After it went to the world leaders, all of the world leaders, by leveraging through the ambassadors in Washington, D.C., then they leveraged it to Barack Obama in 2011. They started the discussion on that. But then in the U.S. government, there was this resistance. The Republicans stood up and said, we don't like this. So Barack Obama had an idea, but then the resistance came out. And then now what had to happen is that people have to be, the people have to be squeezed to participate. That's what happened with Kim Jong-un. He was offered the opportunity to participate. The Olympics made it equal, everybody equal, and then he could come out. But that doesn't mean the United States is ready to accept the idea. So now, what would make them squeezed? What would force them to let go of their own agenda and do this? It was all this idea that had been opened up for debate. People had been talking about it. But then the squeezing action, people, everybody's talking about something, they're not going to necessarily listen. They have their own agenda, their own idea, and what other people are saying, that doesn't fit in with this. So everybody on the individual basis had to be squeezed. Now, I'm going to give you an example of this. I work in a warehouse. This is my business. I'm coming to you today from my shipping department warehouse. I'm wearing clothes from the thrift store because it's cold in here. It's basically like a 3-car garage, and it's basically cold, no heat in it, and it's cold outside. So I'm wearing layers. This is an old flannel shirt, or not flannel, corduroy shirt from the thrift store. I think I paid $2 for it. And because why would I want to get dressed up when I'm working in an old warehouse and I'm doing things that are climbing ladders and coming up, and it's, I share this space with my cat, about 1 million little spiders, and sometimes other creatures come in here too. I've had squirrels come in, and this is it. And so everything I do is amateur quality. This is raw video right off my computer, my little Chromebook, one of my little computers that I have. And I'm an amateur at everything. But when people are being squeezed, like the economy is bad, they come up and they say, somebody is being squeezed, they say, I can do a much better job with this website, this YouTube channel. I know how to do this. I can do a better job than she can. And then when they are willing to let go of what they're doing and they're going, this really irritates me, then I can ask them to come in and help. When they're ready to come in, then the things that irritate them, they're making changes in their life, and that's a positive change. I don't have to be an expert at everything. So today I'm going to tell you about how I'm not an expert at anything. And I'm going to tell you that I'm a psychic, I'm a channel. My gift from God is to be able to communicate with anyone on the other side. So what happens at this point in time, this warehouse is where I channeled all my books. I sat at my computer and I had a tape player, crappy old tape player from the 1980s, but I had everything here that I had saved for years, and then I did that. I was able to say, okay, I can use this old computer, I can use this old tape player, and I can tape it. I don't have a cell phone, which is totally blows people's mind, because I have a landline along with my website. I don't go places. I just basically stay here. I have landline, and why would I pay money for a cell phone that I don't need? I had a cell phone, and the only thing I ever got on it, one of those 3G ones, and basically the only thing I ever got on it was notices from Facebook. Why would I pay money for that when I don't need it? So therefore, when the time comes, I'll get one, but then there's other issues associated with that too. So that gives you an idea that you don't have to have everything, but then what you have is your talents and gifts, and you start functioning from that. Then that is when you join the global renaissance. So I had a warehouse that was perfect for me. So today I wanted to tell you about something I channeled and using my talents and gifts. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an attorney, but one of our exempt purposes is to purify the legal system. So today I wanted to tell you about my letter to the Supreme Court that I channeled. This is what I'm telling you is not coming from my expertise at being an attorney of the law. Basically, I'm making it possible for attorneys who are dealing with court cases or average people to take this letter, and this is what I'm going to explain to you, and just from where I am in my thinking now, about how people who are being squeezed can take that and say, she doesn't know anything about that. So, but I know what this is for, and I can use this, I can apply this in my own life, and I can do something with it. So that's where we are now. If you're being squeezed, I'm going to give you some information. I'm not an attorney. This is not a legal advice kind of thing. This is telling you about my letter to the Supreme Court. So don't say that I'm an attorney, that I'm giving you advice, because the only advice I'm giving you, there's, let's say, the 3 levels of the universe. There's advice, advice, and advice. Advice about the principles, and that's what this is. These are the principles that I'm going to talk about. Then there's the application of the principles. So if I have this letter to the Supreme Court and an attorney is dealing with, how about the January 6th Commission dealing with abuse of power? And then the individuals who are dealing with this and the application of that, the 2 ideas. So is this, let's say, if it's the January 6th committee, and this letter can solve this problem. This is a problem-solving idea based on use of power and abuse of power, but it does so much more than that. Okay, so this is a channeled message, and I channeled this on around November 9th, 2017. And then it took a long time to trickle up. I sent it to the Supreme Court. Now I know that the Supreme Court gets millions of letters in a year, and and not all of them are letters that they're going to listen to. I don't even know if they read them all, and especially on crappy old letterhead. Will they read that? Do they care if it's on crappy old letterhead? Because this is basically so old that this is a copy of it. But anyway, so here we go. Your Honors, our organization, I'm going to do this sentence by sentence, so you can understand that this is not just an average letter that gets sent to the Supreme Court and how it can affect you and affect the world. Our organization is working to create an international government based on the U.S. Constitution and the principles of the cooperation of nature. Now, if you have, let's say, abuse of power, if this is an abuse of power, addresses use of power and abuse of power, what happens if you play power games and the ripples go out, the ripples of effects go out? So if you have 3 levels, if you're playing power games, ripples of effects go out, like voter suppression, and then what you have is other laws that are based on that if the Supreme Court allows that to go forward, Department of Justice allows it to go forward. You have ripples of effects. Okay, if you have something that benefits everyone, that's in everyone's best interest, there's also ripples of effects that go out from it, and they just keep on going out. If you have the existing structure, what happens is there's 7 ripples of effects that go out, and that is you're passing on the crisis to future generations, and it takes 7 generations to undo the damage. So it creates a big loop. Okay, an example of that is our each person has a racial purpose in life, and that has to do with your family. My family has a racial purpose that goes back 2,000 years, and it had to do with, it was about the time of Jesus. But I don't want to go into that, but it created a loop in our family, and our family, it's called Curse of the Generations. And it takes 7 generations to undo the damage, but if the 7 generations don't solve the problems because they don't know how, then it takes longer. Each generation comes in with a different stage of the planning process, but what happens if they don't do it? Then it took my family 2,000 years to solve this problem. So maybe this is going to help me solve my family's purpose that got kicked off course so that we can all move forward again. Okay, you have a racial purpose too, and I'm not talking about a racial purpose in terms of your what race you are. But there might be some effects of that too, because if your racial purpose got kicked off course because you're African American, and you got kicked off course because one of your ancestors was sold into slavery, well, I'll talk about that too in another video about slavery and how there was a misunderstanding about that. If you got kicked off course, then basically what happens is that you have to get your family back on course. You might be the person who's going to do that. There's one person in each family who comes in with the racial purpose, so to speak, but they're all part of that. And then it's like everybody works together to solve the problem on the racial purpose. All right. So now our organization is working to create an international government based on the U.S. Constitution and the principles of the cooperation of nature. Oh man, what does that mean? Okay, all right, you got a plan, but what happens if the world leaders are talking about it, or the ambassadors are talking about it, people in 87 countries are talking about it, and they're telling people? And, step by step, and then all those people talking about it, an international government, we have a chance to go up, to have the ripples go like this. So if we don't have this idea, if we only have straight ahead, and it's going to create this big loop, or down, and it's just going to create ripples of effects, causing problems, and the ripples of effects become global, like the pandemic is like one of the ripples of effects. Okay, how many ripples of effects can we handle? Like economic, that's basically what we have to deal with, is we want to choose to go up and have the ripples of effects continue to go up and benefit everyone, every single one. So I'm a channel, and I can channel anyone on the other side. That's my gift. So I'm not sure. I've channeled this letter. I'm the captain of my own ship. I don't know who the author of this is. But speaking from this, the only person who would really give me this, I'm not a very good writer. I just talk very average. I'm not a scholar. I went to college for 5 years altogether and lots of continuing education, but I speak to the masses. I'm not very elite person. Okay, can you tell? Okay, but I'm speaking to the masses is fine. Okay, I'm an average person speaking to the masses and hoping that the ripples of effects will go out to benefit everyone, because I'm functioning based on my talents and gifts. All right, so if there's an international government that everybody's talking about and opening up for debate, and every time somebody has this letter, it's gone viral. It doesn't have to go YouTube viral, it can go discussion viral. All right, so an international government, we can go up. The world can go up. When people are being squeezed, like Kim Jong-un, he can choose to join the international government. All those world leaders are going, I have a way up. I have a way up. Now, the next step is, okay, before our Constitution can be used as the basis for the international government, laws and practices that have caused chaos in the legal system must be purified to prevent the chaos from spreading onto the international level. Okay? Chaos. Okay? Chaos. Okay? We don't need loops that take 2,000 years to resolve. Basically, we want to have those up. So people are being squeezed. When people are being squeezed by the chaos, they now have a way to go up. They can be participating in this idea that allows everybody to function on a higher level. Okay, you might be able to come up with better ideas than I do, but this is what I read in this. Open it up for debate. Okay. Laws and practices. What are these laws and practices that are causing chaos that have to be purified? My organization, one of our exempt purposes is to purify the legal system. So once this letter comes out, then it's up to us to start the process to purify the legal system. But anybody can take this letter and purify the legal system with just what they can interpret from this letter. Okay, if there's an attorney who's going, how am I going to win this lawsuit? I can't, it's abuse of power. The January 6th Commission are going, we don't know how to do this. We just have to take it step by step. We have to prove intent. We have to do this. We have to get all the subpoenas. We have to do this. This can help because it talks about abuse of power. What are the principles related to abuse of power and use of power? Okay. Because if Lady Gaia and I am that I am, let's say I am that I am, probably did this, and I'm going to say that it really doesn't matter who did it, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it's I am that I am who came through to me. He didn't identify himself, but I am that I am is responsible for protecting Lady Gaia, and I'll go into that later. Okay, one of our exempt purposes. So we want to prevent the chaos. If we're creating an international government, based on the U.S. Constitution, we don't want the chaos that's in our legal system to spread onto the international level. So before it can go forward, we have to purify the legal system. One of our exempt purposes is to purify the U.S. legal system. So our exempt purpose as a nonprofit organization, a 501c3 charitable organization, is to purify the legal system, and that is basically benefits everyone. Okay, because why would we want a chaotic legal system? Okay, so that's what the next paragraph explains a misunderstanding that got in here somehow. Misunderstandings have led to laws and practices that are based on the letter of the law rather than the intent of the law. Do we see that happening now? The letter of the law is a narrower interpretation. They're both considered legal, but the letter of the law is narrower than the intent of the law. So let's say that your mother says to you, you have to wash your hands before you eat. Go wash your hands. Oh, Mom, I don't want to, before you eat. But then what happens is the letter of the law. That's kind of like the letter of the law. That's kind of the law in the family. You have to wash your hands before you eat. But why is that law there? What is the intent of that law? If you say, okay, Mom, I'll go wash my hands. The intent of the law is that you don't spread germs. You don't come with filthy hands. It's awful to see somebody with filthy hands eating. You don't want to spread the germs. You don't want to do that. It's polite to wash your hands. It prepares you from, it transitions you from playing out in the yard to sitting down and having your meal. You're ready to sit down. You're letting go of the day, and you are doing that. All right. So the letter of the law and the intent of the law. So if this January 6th committee is looking at the letter of the law and the intent of the law, you're still washing your hands, but you don't know the intent of the law. But the intent of the law can be very different from the letter of the law. And who says that the laws are based on right thinking anyway? Is if there's an abortion, what happens if the law is based on power games, or it's based on loops because it's passing it on to future generations? It's like a law that's not based on the root cause of the problem, so it's making the problem worse. And an example of that is the California community property law. Community property laws have set California up for total chaos. They were meant to be very good, but it didn't address the root cause of the problem, so it's like gangs, its ripples of effects have gone out. That's one of the laws we're going to purify in California. Okay, our legal system has 3 levels. The misunderstanding is our legal system has 3 levels, not 2. The 3 levels are the principles, the power, and the project, or in the case of our legal system, they are universal law, constitutional law, and federal law. When any law or practice is based only on the power and the project levels, it leads to the letter of the law rather than the intent, and that leads to chaos. Okay, so let's say you can constitutionally justify something that's basically where you can say the letter of the law is legal, okay? You come up and you just eat your lunch. I don't know why people wash their hands. Okay, so it becomes kind of like this situation where you can justify things that are abuse of power. The chaos comes because you can constitutionally justify abuse of power. Universal law is immutable. It fixes our nation's legal system on a very high level. It is where our unalienable rights come from. And it stands on the principles of equality, liberty, freedom, compassion, abundance, capacity, and tolerance. It applies to every atom in the universe, and so it will be the basis of the international legal system, and is the only legal basis that can unify the entire planet. It applies to everyone. So let's say you have Sharia law, and people look at that and say, I don't want to go along with what people do in Muslim countries. That's Muslim thing. Let them do that. That's not us. Okay? And so what will unify everyone is something that applies to everyone. We're American citizens. Most of us are who are listening. We're mostly American citizens at this point in time, and we don't go along with Sharia law. That's let's see, it's a cultural interpretation of universal law, but it's not universal law. It's like, but the Constitution is sets of government. So I know that sounds totally weird, but I'm getting too much information here. Universal law is immutable, is unchanging. You can't change it. It applies to every atom in the universe. You can't erase universal law. If somebody saw this letter and it was able to went along with justifying abuse of power, like taking away people's voter rights to vote, unalienable rights, that is like the Constitution gives me the right to abuse my power. No, it doesn't. That's a letter of the law. The Constitution doesn't give anybody the right to abuse of power because it includes a clause on what to do to remove somebody from office for abuse of power. So then it's like, well, the Department of Justice isn't going to do it. That's because that leads to tyranny. If the people are not held accountable, it leads to tyranny. Okay, so now the three levels are the principles, the power, and the project. So we have universal law, constitutional law, like the father and the mother. So the father is the one who pegs us on a certain level. The mother is the one who decides whether you're going up, down, or straight ahead. Mothers can be cause problems. They can ignore the problems and create chaos, or they can go up and they can allow everybody to function on a higher level. That's one of our classes, is we're going to be teaching women how to go up. Okay? And the stands on these principles. So equality under the law. The first requirement for conflict resolution is that everyone has to be considered equal. Okay, and if for conflict resolution, like in a trial, everybody has to be considered equal. So, there was a comment in the news the other day. Donald Trump's interview, he said people have to be treated equally, fairly and equally under the law. One of our unalienable rights is to be treated fairly and equally. But so how does that apply to the people who break the law, who abuse the power, who don't understand that? If the legal system is based on fair and equal law, equality under the law, then basically he's right. But he's also not right, because people didn't have the right to break the law. So that's the whole idea. They have to be held accountable, or it leads to tyranny. So that was an example of the letter of the law as opposed to the intent of the law. He's right. He's right, but he's also not right. So you have to understand the difference between what causes chaos, and people understand oppression when they see it. They just don't know what to do about it, and that's why this letter is important. Okay. So it's going to be the basis for the international government, not U.S. law. We're not making states of all the countries. We're okay, come on in. You're going to be the state of Saudi Arabia. They're never going to go along with that. The only thing is to create a new structure over the top of the world based on this, but then it's going to be a separate constitution based on these same principles and based on universal law, and it's going to be where all the states are equal, but it's going to be, how do you fit a great big country like China with a little tiny country like Monaco, or the ones south in the ones that only have like 2,000 people or something living on them? How about California or New York and Rhode Island? You have our founding fathers did the same thing, and they set it up with two houses. One to address, the Senate addresses the rights of the people, and it's not doing it because of the letter of the law and the intent of the law. So you have the rights of the people, the unalienable rights, the constitutional rights, states' rights, all the different rights of the people. The U.S. Senate is supposed to be addressing the because there's only 2 senators from each state, they address the rights, and it doesn't matter how big the state is or how small. They all have their rights. They're all equal under the law. They are states, they're sovereign states, and the same thing will apply with countries. They will have their unalienable rights. The people have their unalienable rights, and basically, which they don't have right now. We don't even have our unalienable rights in our country because they have been abused. Now, the last thing is so the House represents the will of the people. It's based on majority rules. So if the Senate is not addressing the rights of the people, how can the Senate vote to limit voting rights when it's their job to protect the rights? Okay, that's why I think I Am That I Am is the one who wrote this, because he's the one who's protecting Lady Gaia. He's the one who pegs our universe, so to speak, on a very high level. We are Lady Gaia and is Universe Mother and Earth Mother. So we are here. That is our Mother Nature, whatever you want to call her. She's a sentient being, and we live inside her body. All right. That's going beyond the scope of this, but okay. Universal law is immutable, and it fixes our legal system on a very high level. It is where our unalienable rights come from, and it stands on the principles. Now, when you stop and think of it, what are the principles? What are the principles that create a sense of balance? Okay, and equality, liberty, freedom, compassion, abundance, capacity, and tolerance. So these are unalienable rights, don't come from the Constitution. They come from our Creator, the Creator of us all, in the entire, it applies to every atom in the universe, the whole universe. So even aliens from one end of the universe to the other are subject to universal law. And in fact, it goes all the way back to the prime universe, and I did a book with the prime universe too, so we'll get into that later. So those are the principles. So let's say that I, who am not an attorney, could justify overturning the voting rights oppression, because if I went to court, I could explain how to overturn. An attorney would have to put it into legalese, but I could explain to an attorney, I already have, about voting right issues. So we're holding Congress accountable here too. Congress can choose to ignore the crisis and create this big, huge loop, or they can go down into the power games like racism, okay, which is a form of power play, gerrymandering to take away the rights of people to vote, or they can function on a higher level and do things that benefit everyone based on these 7 principles. So now we have a definition of what constitutes abuse of power. Right. So it applies to every atom in the universe, and it will be the basis of the international legal system. So now, why would somebody be shooting off, like Kim Jong-un be shooting off nuclear weapons, missiles, because they feel that they've been threatened? How do they defend themselves? They're being squeezed. Kim Jong-un could either starve to death or wage a nuclear war when he was backed into the corner by Trump with maximum pressure. We're going to use maximum pressure on Kim Jong-un. That's what he said. But Kim Jong-un had a way out of his corner by agreeing to participate in this. But then all of a sudden everybody's talking about Joe Biden hasn't agreed to it yet, and Donald Trump he still believes maximum power is the best way to go. It's not standing on these principles. So this is squeezing people in the legal system to actually, it's being debated, it's actually squeezing people to stand on use of power to benefit everyone, for those ripples to go up. Constitutional law. Now we have universal law that pegs us on a certain level. Constitutional law is the application of universal law within the United States, and it's evolutionary. But when evolutionary, it can be amended. The Constitution can be amended. Does getting rid of abortion, Roe v. Wade, if they kick Roe v. Wade out, if the Supreme Court, what are our inalienable rights that basically prevent people? The only thing, from my personal opinion, and I'm not an attorney, the only thing that I think that the Supreme Court has the right to discuss, to do, is to prohibit the government from paying for things, paying for abortions. And that's pretty much, they can't prevent it. They can only prevent people from public funds from being used for that. And then I have a cure for that too. Okay, because when it's based on when God is the one who gave us the rights, then those rights allow us to fulfill our purpose in life, and they go up. So there's always a solution that doesn't depend on like abortion. All women have to do is decide in their mind what you believe is what is, so they can decide, I don't want a baby right now. It would interfere in my life. I have the right to choose. Right to life, there's a flip-flop idea. Right to life is now the women have the right to create their life without interference from anyone else. That is one of our inalienable rights. I have the right to fulfill my purpose in life, and what you are doing to interfere in my life is against universal law. The Constitution, okay? Now, the Constitution is the application of universal law within the United States, and it's evolutionary. Does it apply where we are right now? Are we a nation that is oppressive, taking away the rights of the people? We're a democracy. But when universal law is omitted, laws that are based on power games rather than principles, and our nation devolves. Laws and practices can be considered constitutional and therefore lawful, but they are unlawful based on universal law. Foreign policy decisions that led to war is a prime example of this, because the unalienable rights of citizens from other nations are disregarded. And then we face the backlashes from universal law of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay. So technically speaking, our country, by waging war on other countries, are going to be held accountable for that. And that's where our exit strategy for Iraq comes in. The preemptive strike. Saddam Hussein, there were no weapons of mass destruction. We have to address the legality of the Iraq war. We have to use it as a learning lesson, a learning tool to enable us to say never again, okay, that we will never oppress another nation. And that's where the international government comes in, because under that, there won't be any president who goes into another country. Disputes will be settled in court rather than the battlefield, and everybody will have this letter, okay? And the monies wasted on war will go to the people instead. Do we have to borrow money to solve the problem of the pandemic? Do we have to borrow money? Our national debt is now at $30 trillion. And if it came from not understanding this, from oppression, then basically our debt, we didn't have to do that. It went straight ahead and created a loop. Forever wars are loops. Okay, pandemics that become endemic are loops. So we have to address, to purify the legal system for world peace to come, we have to address all these loops. Okay. Federal law must be based on both universal law and constitutional law, or it leads to chaos. In other words, like if a father and a mother, basically if the mother is telling the father what to do and she's playing power games, she's dragging the family down. Okay, that's down. We don't want down. We want to have a marriage relationship that's based on life partnerships, and that's what my this is all about. This is like a power source, my power source invention. If this is where Lady Gaia and I am, then I am like a 12-story building. Each of us has 12 chakras. This is where Lady Gaia and I am, then I am live on universal law. Are you willing to stand on universal law? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is the family level. And this is how much power you have based on father, mother, and son ideas. Okay, so who is your life partner? Is this person, and I'll go into that. Valentine's Day is coming up, and I'm going to talk about Valentine's Day and how basically it's based on family genocides. Okay, romantic attachments turn into genocides. Okay, federal law cannot supersede universal law. And it cannot be used to justify denying any citizen of the United States or even the entire planet our inalienable rights to be able to live our lives we want without interference, meaning to fulfill our purposes in life and to be treated fairly and equally and to have a voice in our government. Those are 3 unalienable rights. We have 2 plans to purify. Federal law must be based on both universal law and constitutional law, or it leads to chaos. Federal law cannot supersede universal law. Congress cannot enact any law that takes away our unalienable rights, and the Senate is supposed to stand up and defend us. We have 2 plans to purify the U.S. legal system, and we will introduce a government proposal through 2 senators in the near future. Okay, so that's kind of a synopsis of what is going on. If you're being squeezed by oppression, like Black Lives Matter, hey, is there a letter of the law kind of thing or intent of the law? What is the intent of the law? If you are a Native American, Black Lives Matter might be having to stand up and protest. You don't have to do that anymore. You have to, if you're standing up in protest, you have to come up with a plan that benefits everyone. So then I'll explain the planning process. But you want to do something that is spiraling up. You don't have to fight for your rights because you already have them. God gave them to you. And anyone who's trying to take them away from you is basically breaking universal law. You cannot erase universal law. You cannot erase this letter because this letter is just saying, okay, this letter is just saying, I have the rights. God gave me my rights. God gave me my right to create the life that I've always wanted without interference, to fulfill my racial purpose in life, because those loops, we don't want those loops to go on anymore. All right. So you see what I mean? It's like we don't need an equal rights amendment. We don't need to amend the Constitution to do that. We already have our rights. We can just, if people are going to Congress, like the January 6th Commission, they're following the rules, okay, which is fine. But federal law, they're just following this along. But all along, this was here in 2017, and all the U.S. government had to do, being squeezed by Donald Trump, who believes that he's above the law. Nobody's above the law. We have equal under the law. We have to start to understand the letter of the law and the intent of the law. We have to realize that this is the law. We cannot go, our country cannot go into another country. We cannot put sanctions on another country. We cannot, because this applies to every atom in the universe. It's not just a letter that can be, hey, I have the right to abuse my power, so I'm just going to tear this up and I'm going to put it in the trash. I'm going to run it through my shredder. Pew. Does that get rid of universal law? No, because it's still there. We're still facing the backlashes from it. Tearing this up doesn't do anything to stop it because it's still there. We have to stop being dragged into the drama because it still exists. Every major religion including Sharia law, is based on universal law. Every major religion is a cultural interpretation of universal law. It exists. Every atom in the universe is subject to it. Our evolution is based on it. Basically, you cannot erase this. It still exists. It doesn't matter. This is a piece of paper that can go through the shredder. Universal law cannot. It applies. It's every atom in the universe. So learn to understand that when you're squeezed, this, let me get some tape, can solve your problem for you. Okay? I cannot, it has to be refuted. So go ahead, if you think you can do it, if you can erase this, shredding this paper doesn't do anything, but because it's universal law, and because it's let's say a letter to the Supreme Court, it has to be refuted. So go ahead and prove it. If you take it to court, any judge would look at this and say, you win. If you can prove abuse of power because it doesn't treat everybody equally, it doesn't give, it takes away people's rights, it takes away the freedom. Now, if you have a gun, if you have Second Amendment rights, that doesn't give you the right to shoot somebody. You're welcome to shoot as many targets as you want to. Just don't put a target on somebody's back. Okay? Under universal law, you cannot interfere with anybody else. So that's the law. That's the intent of the law. So therefore, you go ahead, and if you want to erase it, it can't be erased. You go ahead and refute it. So if Donald Trump says, I have the right to abuse my power, I have the right to kick Muslims out of my country, I have the right to take away the children from their people, and all of his supporters are going, yeah, we're going to put this big wall up and we're going to do all these things. People have their constitutional rights. You cannot take away somebody's rights. And the Senate is supposed to be standing up and defending the rights. So if you're voting for somebody, don't vote for somebody who's going to take away people's rights. Don't take that. They can't take away anybody's rights. The abortion clinic law basically stands. Roe v. Wade, it cannot be overturned because the women have the right to their life too, and the fetus doesn't have any legal rights in our government. If you say, well, you can't kill somebody, he said, what about having a miscarriage? How about that? If that's one of the ways up that I don't want a baby now, the fetus will just go whoosh. That the Supreme Court cannot do that. They cannot take away anybody's universal rights. They can only look at the Constitution, and they can say that the government doesn't have to pay for your abortion. Okay, so therefore, because, hey, you don't have to have an abortion. You can just let the fetus go whoosh. So there's always a solution based on what God is doing. Then we have to figure out what God is doing. One of my projects, one of my newsletters is one of my personal projects is Catholic Church in America, and my job is to deal with terrorism and sexual abuse in the church. So because that cannot be addressed from within the church, that's my job to handle that. So I'm going to be addressing how universal law still exists. It doesn't matter. I don't have to tape this together. Basically, that's one of my projects. So just think of how this is going out, and all of it ends the ripples of effects that come from the abuse of power. We're looking at use of power and abuse of power. The Power Series books goes with the exit strategy for Iraq. So you can, instead of going like this, or like this and creating this big loop, you can read the books and you can understand use and abuse of power from the books that I channeled with Lady Gaia. Maybe she's the one who wrote this because she's talking about she helped me write the use and abuse of power idea. It's her body we're living in. So I'm sure she doesn't want us to be like a cancer in her body. All right. That's enough. I ask you to like, share, and subscribe. But most of all, share, because this information, if somebody is being abused in some way, if they're going, I can't get those guys to listen, do an end run. Bring together all the people and do an end run like I did to introduce the plan for world peace. Bring together people who have the same goal and come up with a plan. You can do it. You're part of. Then what you're doing is you're helping us bring world peace. You're helping us solve the problems because you're the people with all the power. Power any government has is derived from the people. All right, that's another way you have your rights. Stand on your rights, but understand that your right to like shoot other people doesn't exist. I can shoot you down in court. Okay? Instead of shooting people down, you would do that. I have 4 minutes left, so I better stop this now on my battery. So I ask that you like, share, and subscribe. But most of all, share because this information is important. Thank you.